Hi, welcome back to Kit Back. I'm Danielle Joworski. Joining me now at the top of our next segment is Alison Maratos and Rebekah Laferriere. And we're going to be talking about really motherhood and kind of the different stresses that women have, being a mother and how that connects to our mental health. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. So can you share some issues that you're seeing, whether it's today, some trends that you've been seeing or things that you're seeing in your practices around mothering and motherhood?
Sure. We have a lot of women, thankfully, that seek out therapy. I think the biggest issue we see is overwhelm, regardless of the age of the children. Women who are overwhelmed by holding a job, a family, a home, trying to fit in some of their own hobbies, and that's really where they're finding that the puzzle pieces aren't fitting together and they're experiencing anxiety, stress, some depression, and that's generally where they start to seek out some therapy.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there different stages of, say, overwhelm at different points in motherhood or being a mother, or depending on when your children, like what ages they are?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that for my piece of the practice, I guess we kind of segment off into working with young moms, and Alison works with some of the older moms. There's some crossover, obviously, but a lot of the younger moms that I'm working with, it's a lot of just being overwhelmed with information coming in, taking care of a new baby, making some decisions about everything that needs to, all the decisions that need to be made with an infant, maintaining relationships with their partner, family, friends, and it can feel very isolating, very overwhelming, and yeah, it can just feel like it's just too much and they don't know where to turn necessarily. So again, we're really fortunate that we have a lot of women who do turn to us and do seek support with us, and we can be a space for them to come in and just say, this is hard. This is really hard. And I think that's where we really shine in supporting those moms.
Wonderful. And when you just allow them that space, your mother's that space to basically, admit it's this hard, and you just you let them say that's okay. So what kind of reactions do you get from mothers when you just allow them that space to kind of be in that moment and be present with that kind of feeling?
Usually relief. I think I find many women are thrilled after just the first session. It's a 50-minute session and they just feel lighter. You can tell they feel lighter just by talking to a neutral third party about stuff. And again, like Rebekah said, all the issues that are on the plate, regardless of the age of their children, many women keep stuff in their heads. It's hard to ask for help, and so we recognize that it's a huge step to make the phone call and come to the appointment, and many are just pleasantly surprised at how easy it was, or how I kind of liken it to letting the air out of a balloon when people come to therapy, that some people just gradually let it out, other people it just kind of flows. We don't want it to pop, but just enough that they get that relief and are really usually excited to come back, even if they've been very apprehensive making the decision.
Wonderful. So they're feeling great once they get there. Just what are some barriers that are preventing them from reaching out for that initial help?
I think it's a whole range of things. It can feel like they don't have the time to, being so busy with their own lives, looking after the kids, looking after, again, so many balls that they're juggling in the air. Maybe they had an experience before that it didn't go as planned. They don't know who to turn to, because there's decisions that need to be made with that as well, right? Just to kind of launch off what you were saying there, Alison, when these clients come in, oftentimes they think, okay, you're going to give me a bunch of skills that I can take away and you're going to ask me to implement X, Y, and Z. When really we're taking the client's lead. So if they just need someone to sit there and validate them and so they feel heard, that's what we do. If they come in and say, hey, I need some skills to help me in my day-to-day to help manage what's happening for me, that's what we do. But we take the client's lead with that, and it's really important that the first thing is the client feels heard. And that's part of our discussion with them.
Wonderful. You talk about different skills that you're kind of helping, the women and mothers to learn. So are there some basic skills that, if you need to start somewhere that you can kind of, start with, or is it more kind of looking at the individual, almost like the individual scenario as to what kind of skills that you would recommend in a session?
I think the biggest skill, I don't even know if we'd call it a skill, is addressing shame. Because I think I know a lot of women we should know how to do stuff as a mom. I should know how to care for my baby. I should know how to manage my teenager. They try to read. Sometimes social media is a bit of a foe. They're seeing people's perfect lives on social media. Kids who are getting straight A's in the hockey stars. There's a lot of shame associated with asking for help as a mom. So that's one of the first things we tackle is understanding that, and really the skill of identifying and kind of actually leaning into the shame and not avoiding it. Okay. And that's kind of one of the first things we try to address in therapy, is just being honest with yourself, and again having that safe space to be honest and say, yeah, asking for help is very difficult. I wish I knew how to do this, but I don't.
Now you touched on something really important around like social media and that picture of like, being that perfect mother and having the perfect children. And there's like even a hashtag, or that whole like hashtag mom guilt, and that feeling that you have by not being that perfect mother or who you think your children need to be. So do you see a lot of that mom guilt in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. And just touching back on the social media piece, it can be really helpful for some moms. For a lot of new moms, it can feel like that's the only, the only contact they have at 4 a.m. when they're up with their kid, feeding or changing a bum or whatever it might be, and that's a lifesaver in that time. On the flip side, though, all of the issues we've been talking about, a lot of information being bombarded. This is the way you need to do it. This is the way you should do it. And, I will have an honest conversation with my clients about what impact is this having on you. Let's have a bigger conversation. How do you feel when you're scrolling through and you're seeing all of these things? Is this affecting you? Is this influencing how you're parenting, for the good, for the bad? And let's have a broader discussion about it. This assumption, as Alison said, that we just know how to do things, right? We can't control these little people and who they are, or big people for their teens. They are their own people. They have their own minds. They have their own lives. And I mean, there's so much on us, so many expectations that we can influence so much of it, and we can't.
Now, you're going back to the overwhelm. We were talking about how women are coming in feeling that overwhelm, and the different stages of motherhood, whether it be how old a mother might be when she starts having children, versus how much older their children are. Are they toddlers? Are they infants? Are they teenagers? Are you seeing? Is there any kind of trend in the types of overwhelm that you're seeing based on different demographics at all?
I definitely think, again, technology plays into this, because, I'm a mother of teenagers. The technology that my kids are using didn't exist when I was a teenager. I jokingly call my kids my tech support, because they know more than I do. So it's a little unsettling as a parent of teenagers. And I relate to my clients when they come with their child's been in trouble on the internet, or they've seen things that they didn't feel they were ready for their child to see. It's very difficult for parents to, again, overwhelming to be up with the latest app that the kids are using to communicate and how they're communicating, and controlling that phone usage, and coming up against pushback for the first time with a kid when you attempt to take their phone or set some limits. And I think that's a really big one with parents of older kids, is just that overwhelm of I don't even understand the technology, let alone know what my kid is doing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think technology is just, it's a whole other part of parenting overall.
It's added a layer that our parents didn't have to deal with, and our grandparents didn't have to deal with. And they would certainly rightly say that parenting teens was tough then, but now I feel that there's a lot more secrecy almost with kids, because a lot of them know they know more than their parent.
And we had the phone upstairs with the long cord you just drag into your room, whereas they've got their phones with them.
Or your mom got on the other end and told you to hang it up.
Exactly.
Humiliating.
A little bit different today.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at kind of mothering and mental health and taking care of yourself, what are some things that mothers can do to really give themselves that space to take care of themselves?
So I mean, when we hear the word self-care, it's not just about bubble baths and eating chocolate or your favorite food or whatever. It's so much more than that. And one thing that we try very hard to work with our clients around is learning how to set boundaries, effective boundaries for ourselves, with our kids, with our families, whoever it might be, is learning to set those boundaries so that we can look after ourselves, so we can take a breather, so we can have that hot shower, whatever it might be. But the first step of that is to recognize what a boundary might look like for yourself. And it's hard. It's hard to navigate that, but it's really, really important as a tool.
Because a lot of times your kids want all of you, and then it's almost like when you're setting a boundary, you're just, for a period of time, you're just allowing a little bit of you to kind of be accessible to your children. Oh, that's a great self-care tool. And do you think that women are giving themselves enough time around self-care?
The interesting thing is I find women whose kids are older and approaching or leaving the nest, it almost has the opposite effect, that they have more time and they don't know what to do. They've lost that person that occupied, or people that occupied their time. And I work with a lot of women who are anticipating their kids leaving the nest, or they leave and all of a sudden they have a partner they can spend time with. They've forgotten what hobbies they used to enjoy before they had their children, because they're not running around to sports and dance and all of the things, and all of a sudden that kind of sense of loneliness and lack of purpose is where women struggle with self-care. Like, again, I think that the surface level, okay, I can have a bath and nobody comes in the bathroom, or I can, clean my kitchen and nobody messes it up. I can do things for myself. I can go buy some clothes, but it ends up getting deeper than that because you have so much time to think and start to feel like you're lost.
Wow. So it's a whole different type of overwhelm then.
It's a different type of overwhelm. You got it. It's very different.
And again, launching off of that, loss of friendships, loss of, relationships. You have your partner, but with the hobbies, with the friends that you would see often, community, whatever that might be, feeling out of touch with that and feeling very lonely. Wow. which is hard. It's really hard to navigate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So kind of like creating that community, that someone that knows what you're going through, like what you're experiencing. So how do mothers kind of find that community?
I often suggest to women to really, I love when people start journaling when they start therapy, and oftentimes as a bit of a journal prompt, I'll say, I want you to write down what you used to like to do before you had kids. Yeah. And shockingly, it's not really a shock as a mom when you think about, I don't know, that was 20-something years ago, and really writing some things down. And if not stuff you want to revisit, it's what have you always wanted to do? Like, we're very fortunate. A lot of people can retire young. A lot of people take care of themselves physically and are healthy. You can learn a new skill. You can, I say to people, go sign up for something and just go and see who's there. Because making friends as adults is tough too, and that's a barrier for a lot of people. They know they're lonely, but taking, again, shame, vulnerability, risk. Oftentimes people say, yeah, it's kind of like walking back into the calf in high school when you're 55 years old, walking into, a course or something like that. And I think that's getting yourself out there, and again, past the computer, the social media, but actually going and having contact with people.
And having those conversations and building connections again.
Yeah, talking about yourself, and again, learning how to talk to yourself, not defining yourself as a mom, what your kids are doing, and that kind of thing, and just who you are. And many women really struggle with kind of remembering who they are, what they like, what they don't like, types of people they gravitate to, that aren't just moms of their kids' friends.
So it's almost like exploring yourself and who you are. Is a whole different type of that motherhood journey that you really have to kind of connect back to yourself again.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
Exactly.
Okay. So if there's anything you'd like to share in our final moments here on this episode or this segment, just kind of with women who are maybe experiencing that overwhelm with motherhood, what would it be?
Try and find a way to take some time for yourself, whether that's calling a friend, making an appointment for therapy, reconnecting back to a hobby, journaling, whatever it might be. Try and carve out a little bit of time to reconnect with yourself and support yourself that way.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for being here today, talking about motherhood and the different stages, and really kind of the impact on mental health and how they can, kind of work with the overwhelm. Yeah. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Okay. We're going to be taking a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we will continue the conversation on women's mental health. We'll be right back.
Day and night, first responders are on the front line of traumatic events, caring and protecting each of us.
Due to the nature of our job, we have a more focus on trauma. We tend to see trauma on a fairly regular basis. They say, you never really know what you're getting into, and you really don't. So you have all your day-to-day things, just being a regular person, then you have the job on top of it. So it can add up to be a lot.
There is an unimaginable mental toll these experiences inflict on a person. The Ottawa Paramedic Peers Support Team created a program to help.
It has been difficult in the past for paramedics to come forward because of stigma. There was the suck it up attitude.
Enter the creation of the Ottawa Paramedic Peers Support Team.
So one of the things that we've educated our staff on here is that we can't read your minds. If you're having a bad day, sometimes people can be happy and smiling. We have no idea they're having a rough time. So we've asked people to reach out. Put up your hand, say, I need help. You talk to a peer supporter. Sometimes it's more obvious. If you see someone crying in a hallway, you're going to approach them and say, can I help?
This voluntary team allows first responders 24/7 access to one-on-one support and crisis intervention resources.
We have a group of about 50 people on our team. So it's comprised of frontline people, so paramedics, our comm officers, our logistics staff, we have admin staff, and these people work on a daily basis to kind of help people work through their problems or challenges that they may be having, either workplace or personal. And then when bad things happen in our workplace, which being a paramedic, we do attend a lot of critical events, then we have a process in place that we can help people kind of work through things, see what they need, and see how we can help them get resources.
The team is readily available to help stabilize, normalize, and refer to an appropriate higher level of care if required.
Our goal is to take someone who's maybe having a bad day for a variety of different reasons. It could be workplace, it could be personal, it could be a combination. See what we can do to help, if there's something within our scope that we can do to help.
The Ottawa Paramedic Peer Support Team is committed to the responsibility of protecting the mental health of one another, mental health education, and decreasing stigma.
People don't realize that we're real people. We don't wear capes. We're just human beings. At the end of the day, we're going home to our families, we're going home to our friends. Not everyone goes home healthy. We're hoping that by having our peer support program, people go home healthier, or at least are able to go home in a better state.
Welcome back to Kickback. I'm Danielle Joworski. Joining me in this segment is Kim Basler, and she is a food freedom and mindset coach. And we're really going to be having a discussion about really helping women to embrace the I am enough mindset. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So the whole food freedom and mindset, so two kind of maybe potentially different areas, but you've kind of brought them together in a really interesting way. Can you share with us how you brought those two together?
Yeah, I think it really came down to how my journey evolved through it. I struggled for probably close to 30 years with my relationship with food. And so the food freedom piece is really allowing ourselves to have trust in our relationship with food again, learning to be able to eat whatever we want without feeling the guilt around it. Mm-hmm. But the mindset piece comes in because we have to be able to address these kind of limiting beliefs sometimes that hold us back, that may cause us to have a relationship with food that doesn't support us. Mm-hmm. And so as much as there is this piece around food that I definitely address with my clients, but it's also just anybody who struggles with perfectionism, comparison. These were a lot of the things that I struggled with. So it's they do come together. I can definitely see them as separate, but they come together for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word trust.
Yes.
And that trust with food. So kind of where does the trust stop, or it's lacking when you're having this relationship with food?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of it stems from our diet culture, a lot of the diets that are out there that so many people have tried over the years, and they feel that they have failed the diet, and that they didn't have enough willpower. We hear that word a lot, and they think it's their problem. And so the trust piece comes in is when we can learn how to allow food to nourish us without being bound by the rules that are out there. I think we've lost sight of that. And then learning, if you do struggle with any forms of disordered eating patterns, chronic dieting, binging, emotional eating, these types of things, it's just allowing yourself to just trust the journey and as it evolves, because it isn't this straight path of learning how to eat again, which we've lost sight of. So it's trust it's a big piece for me, because I'm still trusting myself through this.
Yeah. I really like how you said it's a journey, and it's that evolving and evolution, because who we are is always evolving and changing, and then I'm sure that impacts your relationship with food and that ability to trust.
Absolutely, and I think it all comes down to what type of information you're receiving, where you are spending your time, who are you spending your time with. If you are spending time with people who are not necessarily in the healthiest mindset around food, a lot of body image issues, and you're trying to work on yourself, you have to be really respectful of that. Or if you're in a gym environment that doesn't necessarily support using healthy movement and taking care of your body, but you're in an environment where it's all about changing your body and how small can you get it and how tight can you make it, that's not going to be a good environment for you. So you have to really look at the different parts of your life that could be impacting your journey along the way, because it is changing and we change. Some people have struggled for a long time. I definitely struggled for a long time. So it changes when you become a parent. It changes when somebody might come into your life that might have some things that they're working on, and that could be a trigger for you as well. So.
Now, you do a lot of work around this, the mindset around I am enough.
Yes.
So can you share with viewers really what that really means and kind of what your passion is for it?
Yeah, I think honestly, sometimes we never really knew who we were. Maybe we never really found that depth as a child. Like it really goes back to that for me. And so along the way, you're trying to figure life out, and you try to morph yourself into being somebody maybe that you're not. It's like you put on a mask, this mask when I'm with these people, and then I'm going to change to be this type of person with these people. And we lose sight of who we are when our stress becomes so overwhelming in our lives and we feel like we just can't do it good enough, or we can't be everything to everyone. It gets really overwhelming. So I think we have to allow ourselves to take it one day at a time and know in our heart that we are doing the best that we can in our lives, and allow yourself to make mistakes, allow yourself to learn from those mistakes, and just take it one day at a time. It's really important, because we are going to have opportunities where we might not do as well as we wanted to. And it's when we have a setback that we can't pull ourselves out of, where we're in that low state, that we can find that we need help, right? So I think getting help is important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about, women in this idea around like that whole perfectionism. Do you see a lot of like that imposter syndrome in the clients that you work with?
Yeah, imposter syndrome for sure, but I find it's also just this piece of knowing, why can't I do it the way I want to do it? Or I see imposter syndrome is for sure with people that might have their own businesses that I've worked with as well. Like, who am I to say? I even struggled with that as well when I started doing this. We do that. We second guess everything that we know. And I think it's important just to remember your own skill set. Know that you deliver things in your own way, and we're not meant to be the same. No one's meant to be the same. We're meant to show up as ourselves, and trust that the people that are meant to come into our lives and be our friends and potentially work with us, that's what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the word trust again, and for me, it's so important, because you have to. It's almost like you have to know, like, trust yourself in order to be able to now extend that out. So know, like, trust the people that you're with or the food that you're eating. So really, what's the impact that it has on women when they don't have that sense of know, like, trust?
I will say know, like, trust with yourself. You constantly are questioning yourself. I know for me, it definitely manifested into my relationship with my husband. It manifested into my relationship as a mother. I found that I pulled away from so much because I was always in my head. I couldn't be present with people because I was questioning things I said the day before, or what could happen, in the future. And the more we can take time. This is a big piece for me, is slowing down with our lives. And I've heard this a lot today. I was listening to some of the different calls and interviews today. We have to carve out time for ourselves. It's very, very important, because if we don't spend time with who we are and being able to address the things that are coming up in our heart, we can't ignore that. We try to stuff it down sometimes, but those voices, those feelings are there for a reason. I always feel they're a barometer to help us to know where to go in our life, which path to take, which road to take. So carving out time for yourself where you can get to know yourself again, especially if you've lost who that person was, or maybe never knew who that person was from the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a journey in itself.
It is. I've been on one.
We're all on them.
We sure are. We sure are.
So this whole, so the kind of the sense of the journey, and almost kind of changing your story on that journey and discovering who you are, kind of what are some steps that women can kind of take to start exploring, you know, who they are in that relationship with themselves? I
think it's definitely, I'm a big fan of journaling. Being able to spend some time with your thoughts. Our thoughts, they tell us things, and I find that when we write them down or we talk about them with people that we can trust, there's that word again, we can start to figure out where to go. So the journaling is a big piece for me. Meditation, whatever that looks like for people as well. I don't think, sometimes people think, well, I can't sit still. I don't know how to sit and breathe. What about taking yourself out into nature and walking down a beautiful trail and just allowing the sounds of nature to soothe you as you be with yourself? That's big for me. And you know, I do a lot of self-development, so there's so many books on so many of the topics that we might need support with, and they're all out there. You know, whether you work with a coach, whether you do some therapy, I mean, these are all pieces, and I think it just depends on you as an individual to decide what the right path is. If you need to speak with your physician, I think that that's important too. We know ourselves, what our thoughts are, what our feelings are. Where are we lacking joy? Where are we feeling alone? And so then we can use that to help us redirect ourselves. So it really depends on the individual, but those are the things I would recommend for sure.
You were talking about how there's that feeling, and in your heart, what are you feeling? But then also thinking, you know, what are your thoughts, and journaling them down. So it's almost like there's a balance between almost like what you're feeling and what you're thinking, and then trying to figure out which one you need to listen to. Because sometimes you're feeling something when you're really strong and passionate, or you've got these really strong thoughts in your head. So kind of, how does one, or how can women almost figure out which one to listen to?
I think in terms of our thoughts, we really have to think about what they are. What are the belief systems that we're carrying about ourselves? Did they come from us? Were they passed down to us from somebody else's belief systems? I think at any point in our life, we're able to challenge the beliefs that we're carrying, see if they're still suiting us. This is important. And in terms of the feeling, I would say it's really about listening to your energy, listening to the places where you feel good, where you feel flow, where you feel joy, and it doesn't feel forced. As opposed to, you know, where you feel you're not showing up authentically as yourself. The more you do it, the more you get to know yourself, the more you're able to enjoy that process.
And you're saying how to show up authentically as yourself. But part of the journey sometimes, if you don't know who you are, you know, is there, you know, how do women learn how to recognize themselves for who they authentically are?
Yeah, that's a big one, because I know I lived a lot of my life trying to be somebody that necessarily I wasn't. I was always trying to please other people. I love to support other people. I love to make other people feel good, but we have to always check in to see if it's serving us. So I would say knowing who you are, in terms of that, it's really a matter of trying different things. When it comes to figuring out your hobbies, things that you enjoy, what you enjoy to do that relaxes you, that makes you feel good, experimentation, and there doesn't have to be any judgment around it, and there's no rush. I think that that's the other piece, is there's no rush, there's no deadline. We're just going to take it day by day, and I'm a big fan too of doing something and then just checking in. How did it feel? Is it something I want to try again? Sometimes we have to try things a few times to figure out if it's who we are, and checking in with your friends and seeing, are these the people that I feel I can be myself around, or do I feel like I have to change who I am when I'm with them in order to feel accepted? There are so many people out there in the world that are willing to be, I always say, like, your tribe is out there, your people are out there. Put yourself into the environments where you'll find them. There's so much out there now that we can do. We just have to find the courage to do it.
To connect.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
absolutely. Connection's a big piece of it, right?
Absolutely.
Not to be alone. Like, there's so much help out there for us.
That's right. And that's what this show is all about. And Kickback's all about connecting and spending the day with us. So thank you for spending this segment with me and really with our viewers, talking about really food mindset and just really trusting yourself, learning how to trust that trust piece.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And we're going to head back into another commercial break. And when we come back, we'll be continuing the story on women's mental health.
So actually, we were sitting in the Sleeman Center in the off season, just talking about ways to improve the community programs for the Gulf Storm, and Garrett mentioned that he had always wanted to do something on his own, and he would want to do something with mental health. So that conversation in April of 2016 evolved into a September 2016 launch of McFadden's Movement. So Garrett started out talking to minor hockey teams, and then it went to minor sports teams because girls soccer teams and volleyball teams wanted to get involved. And he basically goes and he talks about his story and his introduction to mental health, which was the loss of a close family friend when he was in grade 9. And then he talks about all the challenges and obstacles he's faced throughout his career on and off the ice. I think he's basically seen it all. So he tries to connect with kids and make a connection and make mental health something that they could talk about. I think the younger that you understand that it's okay to talk about those things, the easier it is as you get into those bigger challenges. I think the saying is, when you're young, it's little problems, and when you're big, it's bigger problems. So I think if you learn those coping mechanisms and learn how to talk about those things when you're younger, it'll be easier to talk about when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, even when you're 20, 30, however old, and you don't get set in ways of not being able to talk about when you're struggling.
Andrew?
Andre.
Welcome back from the commercial break. In this segment, we're talking with Rachel Andre, and she's from Change the Narrative. And we're going to learn more about really what this initiative is all about. And you're doing something really interesting with a little bit of like some animation and an app. So I'm really curious to share this with viewers.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So thank you for being here. So Change the Narrative. Can you share with viewers really what Change the Narrative is and kind of what your connection is to it?
Sure. Well, it was founded by my wife and I, and we're both very, very big film buffs. And film just has this ability to connect people. So when it was originally formulated with us, like when it was in the very early stages, it was mainly meant as an initiative to help films be produced. And it kind of changed. So at this point, what we're doing is really using the vehicle of art and the entertainment industry to really further mental health initiatives. Mainly, we want to push forward mental health stories told by the people who have experienced them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how are you trying to tell these stories?
Right now, we're consulting on both a script and a book. The book is Confessions of a Borderline Queen, and the movie is The Andromeda System, which is about a DID system, as well as producing currently a video game that's about to go into beta, which is the story of Lee, which is, it takes place over a week-long summer vacation. That's a 10-year high school reunion, and you play as a DID, a character with dissociative identity disorder. And everybody in it, it's a dating sim, if you know what that is. The
I
visual novel
don't, so
dating
you can please educate me.
they're really fun, kind of like kitschy games that a lot of people like because they're more story driven.
Okay.
But with dating sims, you get to kind of go, ooh, there's like the slew of people that I could date, and you kind of get to know them. You can pick. You can kind of go with everybody. We wanted to use it as a mental health initiative because all of the characters in it have some form of neurodivergency, and we really kind of wanted to dig in the topic of. We live in a very collectively traumatized generation where people are really starting to realize it and talk about it. So we wanted to focus on a game that had the narrative very specifically driven towards the way that we connect with people and the way that everybody needs different connection based on the things that they've experienced in their life and how that's developed and how they've gotten to be adults. So it's interesting that we're taking characters that were obviously meant to be, you know, high school friends of yours or exes or whatever, and then you see where they are now and how differently they've changed and how you can connect with them.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned DID.
Yes.
So can you share more about what DID stands for and what it is?
Absolutely. It's a dissociative identity disorder, and I have it. I was diagnosed when I was 22, so for me, those kinds of projects speak very personally to me, obviously having that neurodivergency, that disorder. So for people who don't know, it involves structural dissociation when you're a child. You can't get DID past the ages of 6 to 9. It formulates when you're a kid. So I'm trying to think of how to do this quickly, but the fast point of structural dissociation is that when you're a child, I'm sure a lot of us have been around kids, and you can see how quickly they snap from like being happy to crying. Like it's almost instantaneous, as if it's two different people. So what happens is that repeated or constant trauma when you're before the ages of 6 to 9 causes those to split. So when you would normally integrate into one personality, as most people do, around 6 to 9, when you have DID, because of the trauma, your personalities aren't able to integrate the way they would normally, so they stay separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how did you build this into a character then? Like, were there some challenges in creating a character with DID?
Actually, no, it was very easy and actually a lot of fun because it takes away the normal autonomy that you have in a game where you're like, this is my decision, I just want to do it, like I'm going to do this, because now you have, we very much put you in the driver's seat with, you realize what it feels like to be in a car with a bunch of other people who have a bunch of different opinions on where you should be going.
Yeah.
So no matter what decisions you make, you will have constant opinions from your system on the inside with what they think. Like, oh, they don't think this person's good for you. Why? And it doesn't always equate to a good decision. It's just, I love the way that I've learned to grow to accept my DID, because what it has, like, its most frustrating quality is also its best, in my opinion, which is that you have to learn to navigate relationships all the time and be able to take collective responsibility for the decisions that you make or other people in your system make. It really just puts a more community mindset at the forefront. You can't really be selfish in a system. It doesn't work out. So, you know, when we go about our days, like me personally, I was looking at that when I was going to the game, where it's just, depending on who I'm interacting with or what's happening or what needs to happen, we will switch out who's driving, like who's in the front, depending on what needs to be done and who's the best equipped to handle it. So we have points like that in the game where one of your alters is better at sports than you are, and there's a volleyball tournament. Are you gonna let them go out, which would be the more common sense thing to do, or are you gonna try and run it on your own, which could end terribly?
So how challenging or fun was it to create these scenarios? Like, are most of them based on real life, or is it just more things that you were able to kind of create as the story was evolving?
I think we kind of started to create them as the story was evolving, but obviously there's going to be some humorous takes that we'll take away from real life. My wife and I, you know, I have DID, she has BPD. We have a lot of stories about how that works and doesn't work, and the things that we've learned about each other along the way because of the hiccups that you face. I mean, that is the way I think you normally bond with people who are suffering from different things, because there's so much overlap when it comes to mental health and disorders and neurodivergencies. The brain is fascinating that way. But yeah, we're both writers, so we always think about these things. She's a psych student on top of it, so oh my God, she loves dreaming up all the ways that you can come up with like fun date scenarios or just like headbutt scenarios where it's just, you know, what kind of would get you talking along a certain line that would either bring things up or give you the chance to completely like navigate away from it and avoid it, which could be bad, could be good. It really depends.
So when you went into creating the app or the game, do you have it? Did you game app? So do you have any kind of clear goals or outcomes that you wanted to achieve with it?
We really wanted to highlight communication and just having an open mind, because that's the one thing that when we started doing the dates, we realized that we wanted to do. We didn't want to make it easy, because a lot of these games have very easy answers where you're like, oh, if I just like pander to what they want, it'll work out. So what we wanted to do is kind of work against that a little bit and challenge to actually consider like how you should go about a situation depending on what's happening. If someone's having a panic attack, if someone's dissociating, like what's the best way to handle it? Not just the way that you think they would want you to say, like they would want the words that they would necessarily want you to say or that you think would be pandering more to it. It really is more nuanced than just like, this is the right answer, you should go with it if you want to win points with them. We kind of wanted to challenge that a little bit with the way that we wrote their personalities as well.
That sounds like it's almost like an educational app.
I would say more informational.
Informational, okay.
Just to be safe, because we haven't worked with any psychiatrists, for instance, like which I would view as more educational would be with specialists. So we haven't discussed so much with that. We are going to be running it by them before we release the game, because it is incredibly important to us that we have people testing who have all of the disorders or neurodivergencies that are, you know, in the game. It's incredibly important to make sure that everyone feels they're represented fairly and well. And the biggest thing that we really wanted was to have all of these people be functional at their core, because even though there are going to be hiccups and we're going to throw things their way that will cause friction, we really want the focus to be that, you know, we don't always hear that people with mental health disorders are functional. And I think we need more stories out there that show that no, we're very functional. It's just there are moments with anybody where you're going to break down a little bit. It's impossible to avoid.
Did you have any big aha moments along the journey of creating this?
I think my biggest aha moment was when one of our game developers told us, and we started talking about the realization that we could use visual dissociation to kind of bring it into the game. So it almost made it, funnily enough, kind of amusing for me to dissociate after that for a little bit, because I was like, I'd get out of it and it would give me something to focus on instead of being like, oh, that kind of like jarred me out of reality a little bit. I could kind of be like, oh, how would that translate into like a cool game dynamic where I could visually use the art to show people what it feels like to be detached, because it's just, it's hard to pinpoint with language, and I feel like visually it'll be a lot easier to come across, and I think that'll be amazing.
So that was like, wow, I never expected that.
Yeah, I never really thought about it before, but because I'm so focused on writing that I focused a lot on novels personally, so putting this in a visual medium was just like, it was giving me a lot of little aha moments, but that was probably my favorite, was realizing that we could do different things to really pin home how dissociation feels, because it's very jarring.
Wow, so thank you for just creating this game ad. It's very informational and really helping people to connect to like the different, like to DID and just to, like mental health in a very different way.
Yeah, we just thought it would be a fun way to have it be interactive and entertaining, so that, you know, you really kind of get people in with the characters, and then you start pushing more of the informational stuff. We even want to have there be an accessible part of the menu that has videos, like informational videos about each disorder, each, you know, mental health topic that we tackle, because it's really that we do want to bring light, like bright light, good light to this, and just show people the amazing capabilities of the human brain, and that, you know, having a disorder doesn't mean anything one way or the other. It's what you make of it.
Well, thank you for sharing your light today with the viewers today on Kickback.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We're going to be now moving into, we're excited to show you a performance from Stephen Ryan, and the performance is on I'll Be Here. I'll Be Right Here.
heart's made of stone, and your skin's cut too deep. You hurt down to your bones, and you feel weak in the knees. Well, before you go falling apart, I've gotta say my piece. We're only human for a moment in time, and the rest is a mystery. So if you feel like breaking down, and it seems like there's no one around, then you can't pick yourself off the ground, and all that appears seems so unclear. I'll be right here when there's nowhere left to turn, and your lungs refuse to breathe. And all those times that you got burned, I've left you frightened by the heat. Well, before you go falling apart, I've gotta say my piece. We're only human for a moment in time, and the rest is a mystery. So if you feel like breaking down, and it seems like there's no one around, when you can't pick yourself off the ground, and all that appears seems so unclear, I'll be right here when the wall's coming down. You scream but can't make a sound. You feel you'll never be found. For the ones who carry the load, for the ones who call nowhere home, know that you're never alone. So if you feel like breaking down, and it seems like there's no one around, when you can't pick yourself off the ground, all that appears seems so unclear. So if you feel like breaking down, and it seems like there's no one around, when you can't pick yourself off the ground, and all that appears seems so unclear, I'll be right here.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to Kickback. Our next segment is with Rachel Senko, and she was actually one of our hosts earlier today, and now she's back on the flip side as one of our guests. And we're really going to be talking about the connection between your gut and your mental health. So such an important topic. So thank you for being here as a guest.
I know it's interesting to be on the other side, but I'm really excited to chat about. This is one of my passion projects.
Wonderful. So it's all about gut health and mental health.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you take viewers through really what is the relationship between kind of what's going on down here in your gut and what's happening up here in our brains?
Right. So there's quite a bi-directional relationship, meaning that what happens in our gut impacts our brain, and vice versa. What happens in our brain or in our mind and our thinking really has an impact on our gut. So it's not one way, and it's not as clean as back and forth. It's multi-directional, but our gut really does influence our health, especially our brain health. And for years, neuroscientists would research the brain as an entity on itself, and now there's a whole school of research going on looking at the gut and the kinds of microbes, the kinds of bacteria that inhabit our gut, and how they play a role in impacting inflammation in the body, and how that impacts the brain. And I'll break down kind of what inflammation is, because it's kind of a buzzword in the health realm. But my passion is about educating people about the gut, and specifically about these little minions, which I call microbes, that inhabit our gastrointestinal tract, but also inhabit our skin and the environment around us. And there's this question of, are bugs or bacteria friends or foes? And they're actually our friends. And over the years, we've heard of like disinfecting, antibacterial. I've even had, in my schooling years, when I was in grade 2 or 3 or 4, our school nurse tell us not to play outside in the dirt because the bacteria will get you. And what we're realizing right now is that these bacteria that live in the soil, that are on our skin and in our gut, are so incredibly important. In fact, they do so much for us that we couldn't live without them. And so I love to call them our minions, because they do so much work for us night and day. And this bidirectional relationship that happens between the mind and the gut and the mind, I'll use the example of serotonin. Serotonin is a big word in the mental health community because it's associated with, it's called our happiness hormone, our happiness neurotransmitter. And serotonin, as you have it, is, even though it's called a neurotransmitter or neurochemical, 80%, or actually more than that, 90% of serotonin is actually produced in your gut. 9% is produced by blood platelets, and only 1% of serotonin is produced in the brain. And GABA, dopamine, other neurotransmitters are also majorly produced in the gut, and the manufacturing is in large part due to beneficial microbes that inhabit the gut. Now, when you are experiencing stress in your life, once in a while, fine, but if you're experiencing chronic stress, whether that's real or perceived, your body upregulates cortisol. And cortisol, when it's chronically, you're in this chronically stressed states, what happens is it impacts serotonin production in the body. And where is the majority of serotonin produced?
It's in our gut.
In the gut. So when you're feeling anxious or nervous, you get butterflies in your stomach. That's not just imagined. There's actually this powerful connection. So we know that perceived stress affects the gut. It affects the bacteria in the gut that are responsible for the manufacturing of these really important neurochemicals. We also know that beneficial microbes in the gut keep the integrity of our gut lining really strong. And your gut is like a barrier between the inside of your body and the outside of your body. So your gut is actually the outside of your body. Your mouth, all the way through your digestive system, is technically the outside of your body. When you are chronically stressed, we know it impacts the gut through serotonin production, but what also impacts the gut is food.
Yes.
Poor sleep hygiene, stress, lack of movement, but really food. Food is so important for nourishing the gut. And we know that good microbes keep the gut lining strong. So what happens when our gut lining becomes compromised? So instead of being tight, the cells that make up our gut lining, instead of being tight, they become kind of loose, and we get kind of holes in our gut. And our gut gets leaky. And things like gut proteins, parts of bacteria, food particles, things that are meant to be eliminated through the gut, what happens when the gut is leaky is they can actually leak through the lining of the gastrointestinal tract and circulate in the body. And when that happens, it challenges our immune system, because now there's something that was inside the gut, which is technically the outside of our body, that is now leaked inside the body, and it's not supposed to be there, because the gut barrier is selectively permeable. It only lets certain things in and out. So when these things leak through the gut and challenge our immune system, we get these chemicals that are a beneficial part of our immune system, but when they're chronically stimulated, we will get this chronic turning on of the immune response, because things are continually leaking through our gut. We get this upregulation of inflammation, and this inflammation response is linked to anxiety, and depression. And in fact, most chronic diseases in the body. The World Health Organization has said that inflammation is the core of chronic degenerative diseases, which are the #1 cause of death in the world. And that's heart disease, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's. So we know that inflammation, which originates in the gut, especially long-term systemic inflammation, starts in the gut because of compromised gut lining. And if the gut lining is compromised, we know that the bacteria, the beneficial microbes in the gut, have therefore been compromised. And we have this knowledge now, so we have landed in a really powerful place where we can say, okay, what things can I do? What lifestyle choices can I make to heal and seal my gut, to nourish and cultivate a population of beneficial microbes in my gut?
Nice. That includes eating, like certain foods as well.
Big time.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay.
Yes.
And what kind of, so we only have about a minute left, so kind of what kind of foods, if we're going to be eating something that can help those microbes?
Lots of vegetables and fruits. Prebiotic fibers feed the good bacteria. The good bacteria use these fibers to stay healthy and thrive, which therefore benefits your gut lining, which benefits your brain. The things like fermented foods. Kimchi, which is a traditional fermented food, is being researched for cancer and depression. So fermented foods, kombucha is really popular. And then get outside, be in nature, get in the soil, go for walks, get sleep.
Get sleep and move.
Move your body. Yes.
I think a big learning is just, it's not like it's the bacteria, it's not necessarily the gut and having the leaky gut that is the issue and what's coming out. It's the inflammation that's being caused by
these lifestyle choices that we make. So really mindfulness, which we've talked about all day, and really living intentionally.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here today and being on the guest seat.
Thank you. What a pleasure. This was fun.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. And coming up, we're going to be having Ben and Aiding returning to the hosting seats, and they're going to be back in studio with the Mayor of Brantford, Kevin Davis. Stay with us.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Looking for great seats to all the action? Rogers Super Sports Pack delivers. With NBA League Pass, get up to 40 out-of-market games every week, all season long. More dunks, more slams, more to love, live in HD. NBA League Pass, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack. All this for only $35.95 a month. Order through your remote on Channel 431 or call 1-888-ROGERS-1 today.
Whether it's in the kitchen,
bibimbap.
Bibimbap.
There you go.
I love it. Or at the table.
Let's get rid of all of those cards. Keep two.
Natasha McKenty serves up fun and interesting conversation.
It can really position you as an expert in your particular niche or industry.
Get details about upcoming events, the how-to on a new recipe, or discover a local author. In studio,
it's pink